Hello everyone, today a very interesting video awaits you. I would like to ask you to support this video by liking and subscribing to the channel. Enjoy watching everyone. This story began in a very dangerous place where no one would want to end up, Lanyang Mountain Prison. It is located high in the mountains, where there are no cities or settlements, but only wild wolves howl. The mountains repeat the loudly spoken words of the overseer, echoing. He yells at the prisoners to hurry up and finish the job as quickly as possible. People are very tired at the end of the day. Our hero was a prisoner named Yen Vu. His tool that day was a shovel. He ground all his hands to calluses, dripping rock. The young man stopped his work for a minute to look at how his hand was doing. Suddenly the overseer's whip slashed his back and pain distorted his face. At the same time, he heard the words of the head of the overseers, who called him names and told him not to play dead. By the end of the day, the supervisor's chief became even more angry. He shouted that he was the most important person here and everyone should obey him unquestioningly. The boss threatened the guy that he would beat him to death. Suddenly, the words of a slave named Sun Doi were heard. He was nicknamed Skinny Monkey. He respectfully turned to the chief and said that the new prisoner was not yet used to working hard. The boss did not let up. He threatened the teenager and said that Yen Vu should work hard in the mine, and if he does not cope with the task, he will fall under the hot hand. Finally, he swung his whip. One of the guards, who was dressed in armor and a helmet, suggested to the chief that he could instruct another prisoner to deal with the new guy. This will increase your authority. The guards left. The blonde guy Sun Doi handed his staff to our hero and asked if he was okay. Yen Vu felt very bad, but he held on with all his strength, then thanked his friend. Our hero was at hard labor for only 3 days. The young man with the nickname Skinny Monkey told him that he had never seen a new guy get so picked on as he was. The dark-haired young man considered himself more handsome than all of them. He answered quietly that if he ever got out of here, he would kill them all. But the Skinny Monkey guy thought he was wandering. What freedom! Yen Vu recalled how he was walking down the street recently. He is only 16 years old, but he has achieved excellent heights in military affairs. People say around him that his skill with weapons is incredible. In addition, our hero will inherit one of the highest titles of the great Saya dynasty. All people envied him. Such a good pedigree was very rare. His family was both noble and rich. One day, his father, rubbing his beard, told his son that Prince Fu was coming soon, and the families wanted to become related, so they would marry their daughter Tan Ziawen to him. Poor Yen Vu was not at all happy with his father's words. He shouted that he did not like this prince's daughter at all, because he already had another in his heart. The young man did not say her name. He was very angry. The head of the Fu family became angry. He slammed his fist on the table and said that this meant shame for the whole family. In those places it was not customary not to fulfill the wishes of elders, because it was dangerous. In the end, Yen Vu was shackled for disobedience. They wanted to put his parents in prison as well, but the young man asked that only he be punished, because only he himself is to blame for this. All the criminals' relatives wanted to renounce their titles, if only the rebellious guy would be left alive. A decision was made, to spare his life, but send him to Lanyang Mountain Prison. There our hero was supposed to be a low-ranking prisoner. The teenager did not feel sorry for himself, because it was his decision. He mentally asked for forgiveness from his father, mother and brother for having lost everything. Yen Vu raked the stones with his fingers and said, returning to reality, that he needed to get out of this rotten place. Then he wanted to take revenge on all his offenders and show what kind of family the Yen were. The fair-haired guy Sun Doi, seeing the tenacity of the new guy, thought that if he didn't die, then it would be possible to make friends with him. Suddenly the new guy's shovel hit something in the ground. He stopped digging. The young man did not know what was there. A small creature crawled out from under a stone covered with sand. It was a blue-eyed puppy. He crouched to the ground and pressed his pointed ears to his body, afraid to move. Our hero looked at him. One thought came to his mind. The teenager was so hungry, because he had not eaten for 3 days, and he thought, looking at the animal, how to enjoy the delicious food. However, the smart little animal had a gift. He held it with his little paws. It was a small walnut-type box. In this place, this object looked unusual, among the stones and sand. The young man winked at the find and was surprised that he had only been here for 3 days, but had already found something special. The baby looked at him with his small eyes. The young man said that he would not eat it for the gift. Then the teenager took the box. Energy emanated from it. The heat flowed directly into his body, increasing the man's strength. He hid it on himself, and next to the object the young man felt better. The guy found something again. It was red hematite. The guy thought that he could get some food for himself. He was very happy about what happened. After all, a stone of this size is very rare here. Our hero became serious as he saw a whole crowd of prisoners heading towards him. The question was asked by someone in the crowd who he was. This did not bode well for the guy. The old woman picked up the stone and, holding it in her hands, said that the young man did not even know who she was. The leader felt that the teenager was disrespecting her. There were a lot of guys behind her. The young man said he didn't care who the woman was. He asked for the stone to be returned to him. He only had a shovel in his hands, and there were more and more guys near the leader of the prisoners. One of them, the bald prisoner 6 Jew's son, said, pointing his finger at the teenager, that he should obey the elder Van and be respectful with her, otherwise he would tear the boy's jaw. The man became very angry and clenched his fists. He shouted that he wanted to teach the new guy a lesson so that he would know who was in charge in the 68th department of the prison. The old woman who was their leader said that she herself wanted to have a few words with this stupid boy first. At these words, she smiled and looked attentively at the young man. Yen Vu raised the shovel as his weapon and said that the fat woman should not piss him off, return his stone to him, because there would be no mercy from him. He looked determined. He was ready for anything. The old woman said, flirting with the young man, that the guy, if he wanted, could come to her in the evening. If she liked everything, then she would force the prisoners to find such stones for him every day. The young man picked up the shovel and began to quickly run towards the leader of the prisoners. He shouted to the fat woman that she wanted to make him an errand boy, and this was only possible through his corpse. The boy rushed past the old woman when she jumped to the side, raising her hand with the stone high. The old woman shouted that she did not want the young man to die, she wanted to make him her friend. The old woman grabbed his head and pressed his face to her huge chest. The young man thought what powerful hands the fat woman had. He had not eaten for 3 days, was weak and could not free himself from her embrace. Suddenly a small animal jumped out from under the old woman's feet, took a stone in its mouth and ran away. The woman squealed that what she hated most in her life was furry creatures. She ordered everyone to catch the creature. 6 prisoner leader Jew's son immediately rushed to run after the puppy. He shouted at the animal and called it names. The man put his long arms forward, wanting to grab and kill the baby. The young man could not come to his senses from the old woman's embrace. She smelled so bad that there was nothing worse in life for a guy than that smell. The young man spat at the thought that he was pressed to her chest. The fat woman did not let up. She approached the young man again, saying kindly that he should think carefully about her proposal for a meeting, otherwise she would not allow him to find stones, then he would die of hunger. Then the fat woman slowly followed the two prisoners who were chasing a small puppy. She scolded and called the awkward accomplices, saying that they could not catch the mangy dog. The blonde guy Sun Doi, who was watching this situation from afar, approached Yen Vu and said that he was jealous of him. Our hero did not understand what there was to be jealous of. The friend explained, closing his eyes, that when you live for a long time in a place like a prison, there is nothing to choose from, and any fat woman here is just a beautiful flower. When evening falls, there is no difference. Our hero could not bear everything that was happening to him here. He clearly understood that he needed to get out of this place faster. He spoke his thought out loud. Sun Doi immediately became serious. He replied to the young man that it was easy to talk about escaping from a mountain prison, but there were thousands of people before him who talked about it, but did any of them end up free? A friend told the young man that the prison rules stated that a prisoner who collected 50,000 kilograms of hematite could buy his freedom. Our hero received hope. Yen Vu thought that even the leader of the prisoners, the evil fat woman, could not accumulate enough stone to buy herself freedom, and yet she has the ability to take hematite from others. Suddenly the guy noticed a small puppy who ran away from his pursuers and returned to his owner, whom he chose himself. He had that big rock. The young man thought about how to feed him now. The friends looked at each other. The puppy was black, so Yen Vu decided to name him Chernish. Sun Doi's friend also liked the baby. The two of them looked at the little animal, but now they had to work for three. The guys approached the wall of a high mountain, where the rock was especially hard, and began to work. The skinny monkey and our hero began to chisel the rock, because they needed to earn food for themselves and the baby. The day was coming to an end, the sun was setting below the horizon. The desert began to cool and the coolness gradually descended. Friends, the skinny monkey and our hero sat on the rocks and ate. They earned some food for the stone the young man found. Their pet ate next to them. The young man thought about the sickening smell coming from the food. But there was nothing else, you had to eat what they gave you in order to survive. When suddenly someone from behind pushed him in the back, he fell to the ground and overturned the contents of the plate. The young man did not expect the blow, so the enemy took him by surprise. The guy was very angry. He stood up and said that he had not eaten anything for 3 days, and someone dared to interfere with his snack. This was done by the 6-prisoner leader Ju Sunday. The man smiled. He came to have a heart-to-heart talk with the new prisoner. He said that the guys got this food thanks to the little creature. These words made our hero very angry. The boy shouted to the man that he was in trouble and wanted to punch him in the face. But the attacker Ju Sun dodged the blow and now decided to attack himself. He said that the young man is weak and male strength is many times more powerful. After these words, the man struck a strong blow to the young man's forearm. Yen Vu was in a lot of pain, it felt like his bone was cracking. Blood appeared on the skin. The second blow from an adult man knocked the guy down. The prisoner shouted at the young man that he might be handsome, but he was just useless trash. The poor young man lay on the ground, his arm hurt unbearably. Ju Sun stood over him. He said that if Van's sister hadn't attracted him, he would have been a corpse already. The man was jealous of the young man towards the old woman. The man hoped that the leader of the prisoners would reciprocate his feelings and they would spend many passionate nights in tenderness with his sister. The young man tried to get up and walk to his friend. The wound on his hand was bleeding. My head was spinning from hunger. After all, his food was spoiled, unless a small puppy could finish it. Friend Sun Doi helped him walk to the stone. He said that the young man should rest and eat some food that he had left for him from his portion. Our hero told his friend that he was being kind to him, because those prisoners would now pester him too. The blonde guy Sun Doi replied that he is very good at fighting, despite his thin body, so the skinny monkey is not afraid of them. Our hero said that now Sun Doi is like a brother to him. He smiled back at him, calling him brother, and asked whether he would eat, because he had left half the portion for him. Either from pain or from anxiety, Yen Vu did not want to eat. Then the skinny monkey sat down and finished his portion of food to the end. It was clear that the food gave him great pleasure. The young man squeezed in his hand the nut that he found today. He took only the bread and began to eat it. His friend Sun Doi encouraged him. He said that when there is food, there is strength. Night was falling on the mountains and it was getting cool. The stars, one after another, began to light up in the dark sky. Our hero only now realized how wonderful the taste of bread is. Yen Vu hid the nut that the dog gave him in his clothes. It seemed to him that the object was special and had some kind of energy. He told the puppy that if he ate this nut, his wounds could heal. The small animal looked at its owner, as if understanding what the guy was saying. The puppy decided that it would be better now to keep the nut. The night took its toll, and the young man's eyes closed from fatigue. The teenager's thoughts did not leave him even in his sleep. The boy thought about his family, why the ruler condemned his parents, because they are honest people, which means he is obliged to restore honor to the family and destroy the monarchy. The young man was a little delirious in his sleep. He was so tense even in his sleep, realizing how serious his condition was. He couldn't change anything. The puppy took the nut into its mouth and approached its owner. The animal approached the face of the man, whose mouth had opened in his sleep. The puppy put the nut directly into Yen Vu's mouth. The object acquired some kind of light glow. Then this glow was transmitted to the face of our hero, and then penetrated into his heart. Light illuminated his body from the inside. As if something magical happened under the influence of a special object. The young man's eyes opened. He was in a fog. The young man heard someone calling him quietly. The first thing he thought was who was calling him. It was a woman's voice calling his name. Behind the teenager there were many beautiful girls. They all paid attention to him. One of them put her hand on his shoulder and called out to him quietly. The guy didn't understand what was happening, where he was. The dark-haired girl with straight strands of hair sighed languidly, looking at him. The young man did not know who to respond to. All the girls were more beautiful than the other. They called him by name. The dream was so beautiful that the guy could not open his eyes. There was a dog next to him. Thinking that it was a beauty, the young man went to kiss. The puppy did not like this and put his paws forward. The young man was still in a dream, where the girls caressed him and offered him fruit and food. He laughed and basked in the water of the spring, and all the beauties wanted his attention. Yen Vu was so hungry that he was ready to eat anything. And here he was offered a very ripe and fragrant peach, which he greedily took in his hands and began to eat. One very beautiful girl told the teenager not to give up on his life. She promised to reveal to him the 9th secret. The beauty wished to return his title to him and clear her name. Without speaking further, the girl disappeared. The guy wondered what kind of secret she wanted to tell. Suddenly the thought struck him that fate is built from 9 things, one of which is martial arts. The young man's entire internal state was restored. He made the transition from sleep to reality. How painful it was to feel myself again in this place. Only the dog pleased him with his presence. The sun was rising from behind the mountains, bringing with it a new day. What kind of day it would be no one knew. Although in a place like a mountain prison, all days are similar to one another and promise one thing: hard labor. The teenager quickly got up and said that he slept sweetly. He moved his hand and did not understand anything. After all, yesterday, the sixth leader of the prisoners broke it for him, and today he no longer felt the pain. The young man wondered how it happened that today everything was fine with his arm, there was no trace of a fracture. He moved his fingers again and again, but they did not hurt. The teenager sat down on a large stone and began to feel his body, but he did not feel pain, nothing hurt at all. He wondered how this was possible. The young man remembered his dream. There was a harem of beautiful girls who gave him affection and undressed him. Is this not a dream? My body is filled with new energy. Our hero sat in the lotus position and remembered that one beauty tried to teach him an art called the ninth secret, and he remembered everything that she put into his head. He closed his eyes. One thought haunted the teenager: where did that nut go? Did the boy really think he ate it? The young man remembered that in a dream he ate a peach, and thought that in reality he ate the nut that was now in it. The young man desperately wondered how the nut could have gotten into his stomach, and who brought the object to his mouth so that he could swallow it. The young man thought that Chernish did it. At this time, the young man noticed the dog playing with a dirty rag. He thought that in order to give the nut to him, the animal first took the object itself in its teeth. He was horrified that his mouth stank. The sun rose high and it became hot. Yen Vu worked quickly with a shovel, tirelessly. Only the grinding of stones on metal was heard around the young man, who did not stop even for a minute. The boy was sweating, drops of sweat were running down his face, but he did not feel tired. The young man was full of strength and scooped up the rock in search of stones. Our hero knew that he had TSI energy, which spread throughout his body. He felt like a warrior again and expanded the boundaries of his capabilities. The young man thought that he should now work hard in the mine to increase his strength. A blonde Sun Doi guy approached the young man and asked him, pointing to his hand, that his friend's hand wasn't broken. The guy wondered how he got better so quickly. Yen Vu replied that he didn't know how, but he immediately felt better, as if he had been born again. The boy cheerfully added that he hoped to get out of this terrible place faster. The young man Sun Doi told him not to forget to get him, his brother, out of this hole. Our hero promised him that since they were now brothers, they would leave together. Then the young man said that he had an idea how they could become the bosses of this department of prison number 68. The fair-haired young man, Autumn, was frightened by these words, his eyes turned white, and there was fear on his face. He told his friend not to joke with such things, because it was impossible. Our hero said that if they don't become the boss here, how will they collect enough hematite to redeem themselves? He knew that fists were everything here, strong and accurate blows were needed. But the friend was not so sure, his fists were weak. Then Yen Vu said that he could count on him, he could teach him what he knew in martial arts. Sun Doi agreed. Some time later, the friends went down into the gorge, where no one had seen them, and began training. The young man shared his knowledge of martial arts, which their family kept, with his named brother. Sun Doi was grateful to him for this. The friends decided to train more to get out of this terrible place. Our hero said that they will be able to overcome everything and then a huge world will open up before them. Today was a good day. Yen Vu dug up a large piece of hematite that weighed 29 kilograms. The boy expected that today he could even eat meat. After all, the prisoners were given food for stones. The friends each carried a huge red stone. There were smiles on their faces. It's not every day that you have such luck, finding two such large red hematites at once. Suddenly 3 prisoners blocked their way. Sister Van, who led the trio, said where they were going and added that yesterday the sister did not wait for him, so she wants to take revenge. The blonde guy, wanting to settle everything amicably, brought his stone to Ju-sun and said that this was a small gift especially for them and he hoped that everyone would be happy. The angry man smiled, his eyes lit up at the sight of such a huge stone. He said that the skinny monkey knows how to manage business and knows how to please his elders. The goon continued that despite the gift, Yen Vu would have to go to the prisoner leader van, otherwise he would break their arms. At these words the young man became very serious. Anger and resentment were boiling inside him. He said that it was in vain that the 6th Ju-sun said these words. The thug walked up to the young man and took him by the chin. The villain said that the teenager annoys him. Ju-sun came closer and took the large stone from the young man. He called him names, saying that he was just trash. The thug said that he knew that the young man would not answer him and could not do anything to them. 6 walked, carrying the selected hematite in front of him. He said that the sister was waiting for the young man to please her. After these words, the young man could not stand it and went on the attack. He approached the offender and kicked him from behind between the legs. The brute jumped high in the air from surprise and pain. The prisoner shouted that he was in great pain. His face contorted in pain. He fell to his knees and put his hands between his legs. He gave the command in a hoarse voice to his accomplices so that everyone would attack the guy. But our hero did not wait for their attack, he attacked again himself, hitting with all his might the first one who approached him. He pressed down the 6 of Ju-sun, who was lying on the ground, with his foot. Then 2 other prisoners decided to attack the guy together, simultaneously approaching him. He took advantage of their slowness, pushing their heads together painfully, so much so that it resulted in a strong blow. The young man stood over the lying prisoners, who were writhing in pain, and told him that they were too weak. He rubbed his hands, stretching them, and looked with contempt at his defeated enemies. The young man took the shovel in his hands and approached the 6th gang leader, who was still lying on the ground, and said that they were just animals, so they didn't dare run into him. The friends took their stones and went to the authorities. Yen Vu was happy for the first time and said that it was time to eat meat. The 6th leader of the prisoners looked after him, not understanding how the young man recovered so quickly. Soon night fell on the mountains. The darkness that shrouded the tops did not spread to the sky. It was clear, the stars were visible on it. Friends were in a cave. Blonde Sun Doi was eating meat with chopsticks. He took piece by piece, examining them from all sides. He said that although the meat is bitter, it is still incredibly tasty. Our hero also ate, sitting on a large stone. Next to him was his favorite. He spoke to him and called him Blackie. The owner said that their victory today was his achievement, so he gave him meat. The baby was very pleased and sat quietly, waiting for the next piece of meat. Suddenly he ran somewhere. The teenager told him that if he didn't want to eat, he would eat everything himself, as he was very hungry. Friends sat nearby and talked about the puppy. Sun Doi said that the little animal is very smart beyond its age. Yen Vu said that he is an unusual dog. He will definitely help them leave this cruel place. At this time, the screams of the old van woman were heard near her home. She screamed so loudly at her 6s that the mountains repeated her words with repeated echoes. In front of the leader of the prisoners stood Ju-sun with his head bandaged and his 2 friends. The old woman said after cursing that she was not mistaken about the guy, since he was able to beat 3 adult men. The woman ordered another of her admirers, Dan, to go tomorrow and bring Yen Vu to her. She said that it didn't matter to her exactly how the thug would do it. He hoped for her attention. But the old woman, having picked her teeth with a toothpick, pulled it out of her mouth and said that he was nothing more than a toothpick. She didn't want to talk to him anymore. He shouted to her that he would do everything. The next morning the sun rose, scorching the earth with its first hot rays. In the mountain desert, with its sunrise, it immediately became hot. Yan Vu chose the morning time for training for a reason, since at that hour no one disturbed him. He did his exercises, mentally remembering everything that he had been taught. You need to control your body wisely. To use the ninth secret, you need to start by controlling the dark energy of dawn, and the best time for this is early in the morning. At noon, Sun Doi, nicknamed the Skinny Monkey, was cutting down rock with a pickaxe. He hit the rock over and over again, creating loud sounds, metal on stone. Another sound came from his body. A friend approached our hero, who also said that he heard this sound. Yan Vu congratulated him. The initial level of martial arts was passed by Sun Doi. He became a warrior, but promised to try even harder. After some time, the thug Sher Dan and 2 prisoners came to the friends. The leader said that Van's sister wants to see the young man. At these words, he smiled sarcastically. The guy became serious. They wouldn't leave him alone. His friend Sun Doi said that the old woman's henchman had come to settle scores again. 3 prisoners, whom the old woman had sent to their friends, shouted at them to stop and come to them. Suddenly, guys from another gang of prisoners, called Hei Sin, approached from the other side. One of them offered 2 guys to join their gang for half of the stones they mined. Sun Doi quietly told our hero that there were 2 gangs in the prison, one led by the old woman Van, and the other group subordinated to Zive. The friend wondered whether he should agree to this proposal. The young man showed a small stone and invited the new group to take it in exchange for protection. The leader of the Hei Sin gang said that Yan Vu is not a bad guy and he has a future. Suddenly the voice of the Sher Dan 6 croaked. He was angry that the spoils were slipping away from his hands. The bully said that Zive is completely crazy, since this kid belongs to his sister, and he will have problems. The 2 men came very close to each other. They wanted to tear each other apart because they did not share the boy. Zive said that since the guys gave them the hematite, then they are from their gang. 6 Sher Dan ordered to grab the boy and take him to the old woman, and no one dares to contradict them. All the people of Sister Van's gang armed themselves with shovels. They approached the young man menacingly. Zive, the leader of another gang, shouted that there would be a war between gangs, and it was started by the 6 Sher Dan. He was so determined that he promised to blow the head off the Sher Dan 6. The battle has begun. Everything that was available from tools of labor immediately turned into weapons. Prisoners from the 2 gangs began beating each other. They did not spare each other. Screams and groans were heard there. 2 friends stood and watched as 2 gangs fought over them. Sun Doi suggested to his brother that maybe they better leave before it's too late. Our hero said, turning to his friend, that he had already become a warrior. Why was he nervous? Yan Vu continued that if they attacked him, he would believe in his victory. The friend replied that he would fight with other guys, but not with Zive and the 6 Sher Dan, since he thinks they are stronger than him. Yan Vu said that this is correct, he only has the first stage. But you still need to study. Still, after several blows, the gang leaders, crossing their weapons, decided that they needed to teach a lesson to the boy who stood on the sidelines and watched the carnage. They decided to punish the boy. Our hero was waiting for this moment when the predators still wanted to resolve the dispute at the expense of the victim. But he was not going to give up. He told them to attack 2 at a time, as he was in a hurry for lunch. The 2 of them rushed at the young man with great speed. They had shovels in their hands. Each of them threatened to teach the boy a lesson and tear him to pieces. The young man twirled his weapon, a shovel, high above his head. He calmly said that thanks to them he would at least warm up a little. The boy decided to make the first storm blow, with a shovel directly at the running men. The main thing was not to drop the tool from the force of the collision and their bodies. We must try to injure their soft parts of the body. The boy's blow turned out to be of enormous force, so that the men fell to the ground, clutching their arms and their stomachs. They screamed in pain and asked not to beat them anymore. All the others, not wanting to tempt fate, asked the young man not to beat them, since they had already suffered too much today. The young man looked at the prisoners lying on the ground and decided that enough was enough. Here 3 figures of overseers appeared above the gorge, who came in response to the noise. One of them asked what was going on here and lashed him in the air. The 2 friends decided that they needed to get out of here quickly. A few hours later darkness fell. The prisoners sat in their caves. 2 friends Yen Vu and Sun Doi were having dinner and warming themselves near the fire. Their favorite Chernish was also there. He made the kids laugh by licking his face after a delicious dinner. Suddenly the puppy brought something in its mouth. The owner considered that it was ginseng root, one of the most expensive medicinal plants that strengthens bones and cleanses the blood. When the boy took the medicinal plant, he saw that the dog had chewed off half of the root. He looked at the small animal reproachfully, but the dog did not pay any attention to it. The little blackie stood with his head held high, because he deserved half of the root of the medicinal plant. The young man began to chew the root and hoped that with its help he would recover even faster. After a few moments, the boy felt warmth and energy. She created a warm aura around his body. He closed his eyes to concentrate on the spiritual energy within. The young man heard a triple sound from his body, which meant that he was at the 4th stage of the entry level. Once he reaches the 7th stage, he will reach the intermediate level. Our hero thought that the practice of the 9th secret turned out to be very useful. The root of the medicinal plant also helped him in his development. Yen Vu looked at his friend and resolutely said that they were going to Old Woman Van. The skinny monkey friend did not understand why our hero now wants to go to the enemy's lair. The young man said that if you catch bandits, you need to start with the leader, and today. 2 friends made their way to the chambers of the Old Woman Van. It was a separate building with 2 windows. My sister was sitting on the bed and dreaming about something. She remembered the young man whom no one had been able to bring to her for 2 days. The leader decided that tomorrow she would go to him herself. Suddenly she heard someone calling her. The voice was similar to the voice of the young man she had just dreamed of. The old woman looked out of the house and called the name Yen Vu. She thought that he had come after all. 2 friends approached the house. The young man stopped near the woman and honestly said that he would save the old woman's life if she obeyed him. He was determined and stuck the shovel into the ground. But the sister was in a romantic mood. She approached the guy and pressed her cheek to his cheek. This caress made the boy feel very disgusted and sick. Sun Doi's friend also could not stand this scene of the disgusting old woman's harassment. He hit the stone with a shovel. The leader warned him not to disturb them. Then the young man could not stand it and hit the woman who was pestering him. The impact caused her to fall to the ground. She had very strong arms, so she had a powerful punch that smashed rocks. She realized that things were getting serious and rushed at the young man with all her might. The young man determined that Van had a normal high level. He thought it was time to show what he could do. He gathered all his strength into a fist and flew, pointing his hand straight at her face. Yen Vu struck his opponent with all his might. The sister flew some distance away and hit the ground painfully. The woman sat on the ground, covered in blood, wailing how it was possible that only 2 days ago she easily defeated him, and now his level of martial arts had increased so much that she lost. Our hero stood over her, holding a shovel in his hands. He said that she doesn't understand many things, but today he just needs to defeat her. Hearing the noise, many prisoners came to see what was happening. They saw that their leader, Sister Van, was defeated by a young guy. Our hero walked and dragged the body of the old woman by the leg. There was a shovel on his shoulder. He said, addressing the prisoners, that he had already defeated Sister Van and from now on he was their boss. The two leader sixes, Sher Dan and Ju Sun, looked at each other. One told the other that the guy really defeated the old woman. They also fought with him and could not win. Our hero said that if they don't like something, they can fight him now. The guy was very confident and brave that all the prisoners decided to obey. Two huge men, the gang leader's sixes, knelt down in front of him and said that they welcomed their new boss, Yen Vu. All the other gang members followed suit. The two friends stood next to each other. Our hero announced that from now on all members of the Bundy obey him and his brother Sun Doi. Anyone who obeys them will not suffer. The young man ordered to take the old woman's body and throw it somewhere far away. The two villains immediately began to carry out the order and took the old woman's body and carried it downstairs. The young man decided to finish one more thing that night. He wanted to deal with another gang, where the leader was the prisoner Zive. The young man suggested an unexpected attack right now. Our hero has everything figured out. He wanted the entire prison department to become theirs that night. By beheading two gangs, this could be achieved. Two friends approached the barracks where the leader Zive lived. Laughter could be heard near the building. The gang leader sat on the bed and invented entertainment for himself, mocking the little teenager. The kid hid in a corner and begged the elder to let him go. The child's name was Seo Man. The man approached the victim with vile advances. The child begged for mercy. When suddenly some strange sounds interrupted the leader's actions. Zive went to see what was going on outside. As soon as the boss opened the door, on the threshold he saw a prisoner from his guard, who was lying beaten under the door. The gang leader shouted who dared to do this. Sun Doi, taking advantage of the fact that the leader did not expect an attack, hit him with a shovel right in the face with all his might. Zive received a blow that left a scar across his entire face, on his cheek and his forehead. But the gang boss has now decided to strike back. He hit the young man so hard that he flew up and then fell to the ground, hitting a stone painfully. The leader of the Hasin gang approached the fallen guy, crushed his body, placing his foot on his chest. He said that he was a 9th stage intermediate level of martial arts. Zive decided to kill the enemy. When suddenly Yen Vu jumped at him from the darkness. He decided to use his third storm strike against such a powerful enemy. The gang leader's face was distorted with anger, blood appeared on him from the scar that Sun Doi inflicted. He decided to teach a lesson to the young man, because of whom so much trouble had happened. Our hero did not hesitate and used his signature blow, which was suitable for fighting a person of such a level of martial arts proficiency. The enemy fell to the ground from the force of the blow. The gang leader was on the ground, his body seemed to be boiling with anger. He called the young man names and said that he attacked on the sly. The villain was stalling for time, wanting to distract the guy with conversation. Yen Vu is tired of his talk about nobility and fair rules. After all, before the leader acted against the laws, attacking them together with the old woman's gang. The young man said that they are all criminals here. Our hero told the firmly defeated enemy that everything now becomes his and belongs to Yen Vu. The conversation was over, so the rules of the strong were established. In the home of the Bundy leader, the little boy was still sitting in the corner, trembling with fear. The teenager cowered, preparing to attack, and asked ere the leader who wanted to offend him had gone. The child looked out from behind the door and saw Yen Vu, who with one hand held high by the belt of the villain Ziwei, who used to be the leader of the Heisin gang, and now could not utter a word against the young man. All the other members of the gang came and bowed to the new leader, who from now on became our hero. They all shouted greetings to the new boss. The young man told the prisoners to go and tell everyone in the department that he would now be the new boss of the entire prison department. Whoever disagrees will face the fate of the leader of the Ziwei gang. Our hero, turning to his friend, the skinny monkey, said that now they will live here in this house, and all the hematites that all the prisoners, members of both gangs, will mine will be theirs. Sun Doi bowed to him and called him boss. But Yen Vu told him that he was his brother, and whoever is kind to him will receive kindness in return, and whoever harbors evil will reap evil as well. The blonde youth swore allegiance to the young boss and said that whoever tried to take his life would have to deal with him first. The two young men held hands and promised to be faithful to each other forever. They called themselves brothers. The friends were standing a little to the side when the child who was in the house of the leader of the Heisin gang came running up to them and fell to her knees in bow, asking to be their servant. It turned out that she was a girl who had been sent here because a crime had occurred in the palace where she worked, and they blamed her and punished her. To protect herself, she pretended to be a boy. As he was leaving, the young man passed by the child and told the little girl that her fate was somewhat similar to his, but now she would be under his protection. The little girl rose from her knees and burst into tears. This was the first person here who showed kindness to her. She wiped her tears with a dirty hand and said that she was grateful to him and called him master. The next day, in the mountain gorge located under the hanging bridge, the voice of the chief overseer was heard. The boss called him names and shouted what Yen Vu had done now. He stood with a whip in his hands and looked at the two prisoners who were kneeling in front of him. It was Sister Van and Ziwei. The leaders of both gangs regretted the actions of the young man, who became the boss of the 68th Department and subjugated all the prisoners. They wanted the boss to deal with him. The chief overseer thought, looking at the wounds that the young man inflicted on the leaders, that it was the turn of the authorities to deal with him. Just at this time the prison governor was away. At this time, in the 8th department of the prison, something very strange happened. Under the rock where the prisoners were working, the earth opened up and the evil demon that was there swallowed up the people. The assistant director of the mountain prison arrived on a large tiger and told this to another chief, who was the assistant director of the colony. The assistant, who was riding a huge furry wolf, said that he knows about many artifacts that are hidden in these mountains, so this may be connected with one big secret. The third assistant to the head of the prison, who was on the mountain horned buffalo, said that it was necessary to block the 8th department of the mountain prison, since the bloody demon had risen high into the sky and could attack again. The strong man on the buffalo said it was getting more and more dangerous down there. The three of them, on a mountain ledge that hung over the abyss, were three assistants to the warden. They looked down with great fear, where it was becoming very hot deep below. The bloody demon that was deep down there was laughing at the people. He invited everyone who was not afraid to come to him. His eyes were red from baked lava. At this time, the young people were sitting on a stone and eating their snack. They remembered everything that had happened recently. Suddenly Yen Vu became wary. The blonde friend asked him what happened. He replied that he felt tremors. Our hero said that he identified evil energy somewhere nearby, so they need to be careful. Something appeared behind the young people. It extended its hand to them. He was a very thin man, one could say, a skeleton covered in skin. He lay with his hand outstretched. He asked to be given food, since he did not want to become the ghost of someone who had died of hunger. A frightened Sun Doi said he thought it was a spirit, but it was a living person, but very weak. The skinny old man said he was willing to give anything of value for the food they had. He asked the young people to save him. In his bony hand he held a round object. Friend saw that it was an eyeball. This sight made the fair-haired friend feel sick and make him want to vomit. Yen Vu's friend was bolder. He told the old man that he was ready to change. He approached the poor man and extended the bread, but the old man could not take it. Then the young man himself brought the crust to his mouth. At the same moment, the skinny man stopped breathing, and a round object intended for exchange fell from his hand. Our hero said that the poor guy is already breathing. The blonde friend asked Yen Vu why our hero wanted that old man's eyes. It's disgusting. To which the young man replied that this was not his real eye. It was a sealed ball, a huge secret was probably sealed inside it. Outwardly, this object really looked like a human eye. Little Blackie immediately began to play with the round object. His master, looking at him, said to deal with this seal, he now has little strength. Suddenly the young man realized what the dog could do. The young man shouted to the puppy not to touch the object, as it was not edible. But the little animal continued to play with the magic eye, now breathing out flames from it. The owner wondered what mystical animal he had. Blackie never ceased to amaze him. Now his ability to spew flames has been revealed, which means he has spiritual energy. The little Blackie moved the ball again and again with the help of the hot fire emanating from its mouth. He enjoyed this activity so much that he barked joyfully at the round blue object. The young man picked up the magic eye to take a closer look. It seemed that the dog did something to the object, as light energy began to emanate from it. Our hero knew that in order to undo the seal sealed in an object, it was necessary to drop blood on it. The guy bit his finger and dropped a few drops of his blood onto his blue eye. Only the owner of the blood is able to learn the secret of the ball with the seal. Something unusual began to happen in the ball. It opened and some energy came out of it. Our hero, under the influence of this power, was transported to another dimension, where a sea dragon appeared in front of him, which was among the waves. Yen Vu was also there completely naked in the sea elements. This vision continued in the young man's mind for several moments. He froze and sat motionless. His appearance puzzled his friend. When asked by his brother, Yen Vu replied that he saw a turtle dragon and himself in the sea. At night, in the house of the former gang leader, where friends now lived, the young man decided to further master the power that the blue ball gave him. The guy stood up and tensed all his muscles. He decided that he had to draw water out of the ground with his feet and revive the dragon turtle inside his body. Only in this way could he master this power. After the exercises, he listened to his body. He heard a triple click, which meant the 10th stage of the intermediate level of martial arts. The young man felt himself gaining strength very quickly. The confidence that he would be able to leave this prison grew stronger in him every minute since he felt the power of the turtle dragon. The practice of the 9th secret also helped him become this way. At this time, in the 8th department of the prison, something unusual and terrible was happening. One of the prisoners went to look for his friend, who went to the toilet and did not return from there for a long time. He carried a shovel in his hand. The guy cursed and called his accomplice names. Suddenly, when he opened the door to the toilet, he saw that his friend was in the clutches of a large monster that was tearing a man apart. With its large mouth, the wolf broke the poor fellow's hand like a thin stick. At the same time, a flock of evil drags was approaching the prisoner settlement along the gorge. The animals had red eyes, they clicked their teeth, it seemed that these creatures had evil energy. Their pack leader, who now stood on a ledge in the mountain, commanded them, directing them to attack the humans. His piercing howl stood over the mountains, not foreshadowing anything good for the prisoners. The leader of the pack ordered his brothers to exterminate all people so that all their treasures would go to the wolves. The leader was distinguished by the fact that he had clothes, his body looked like a human body, and his head was like that of a wolf. The leader wolf bent down the ravine from above as his wolves tore the poor prisoners to pieces. Suddenly the sound of arrows being fired was heard from the heights of the mountains. It was the third assistant warden who arrived, riding a horned bull. He quickly fired dozens of arrows at the gray creatures. The leader of the pack gave the command to destroy the boss, since he could kill the entire pack. The man shouted that the wolves should not expect mercy from him. The leader of the wolves ordered his relatives to bring the head of the archer. The leader of the people, raising his hand with a spear, told all the prisoners to prepare to attack the wolves. During this time, Yen Vu continued his training in the house that stood under the big mountain where he now lived. The young man continued to practice the art of the sea dragon turtle. Only 5 days had passed, and he was already at the 16th stage and had reached the pinnacle of warrior skill. Sweat poured off him. However, the boy's stomach was already against continuing training on an empty stomach. He hasn't eaten for 5 days. Our hero touched his stomach with his hand and it seemed that the skin had grown to his back. The young man looked out of the door of the house and saw his brother and the girl he had saved. He asked them if there was something to eat. Sun Doi said that we need to stop training. Suddenly the friends heard a sound. Sun Doi looked at his friend with fear. Our hero said that he felt evil energy around him, he became wary. Wolves attacked Department 68, where many prisoners lived. They were very angry and hungry and could rip out anyone's throat in a matter of minutes. All the people began to hide in their homes, those who had time. Even the head of security himself, looking out into the street, immediately hid back in the house, saying that he would not leave the house. One of the young prisoners ran with all his might from a huge wolf. The young man was about to fall, as his strength was leaving him. Suddenly, our hero jumped out in front of the beast and struck him with a strong kick in the stomach. So the animal flew several meters back. Yen Vu began to strike the wolves one after another. The young man shouted to the people not to be afraid, but to unite for victory. Sun Doi also came to the rescue, armed with a shovel. All the people came out of their places where they were hiding from the drags and were glad that Yen Vu and Sun Doi came to their aid. The young boss told everyone to take large stones and throw them at the wolves when they approached. All the people took it and started throwing large stones at the animals. The wolves were in great pain from these blows. However, among them there was a red wolf who was stronger than the rest. The gray wolves were at the warrior level, while the red one was a conqueror and had a higher level. Yen Vu rushed towards him. Sun Doi also followed his brother. All this was seen by the chief of security, who was watching everything, hiding behind the door in the house. The boss wanted the young boss dead. Our hero did not want to make a mistake, wanting to put all his strength into one blow. The young man used his third assault strike against the red wolf. But the wolf, having foreseen the maneuver, jumped high up and ended up above the guy, painfully slashing his back with its claws. There was a bloody trail on the teenager's back, from which blood sprayed. The young man did not expect that the red wolf had such strength. This means his level was much higher than he thought. The two friends stood opposite the red leader, while two more gray wolves ran up to them from the direction of the young man Sun Doi. The wolves immediately rushed to attack him. The creatures grabbed both hands of the poor young man with a death grip, wanting to tear him in half together. Our hero, who had his back to the attacking wolves, saw their attack late in order to prevent it. When Yen Vu finally saw what was happening, he immediately rushed to help his brother. In an instant, the two gray wolves were punished by the young man's strong blows. Poor Sun Doi was very ill, he was lying on the ground. Our hero had to go up to his brother for a minute. But the boy pointed to the red wolf and told his brother to be careful with a strong enemy. The young man himself understood this danger. He left his friend and headed towards the red wolf. Our hero remembered the sea dragon technique, which he mastered for 5 days. He started listening to his body. With a war cry, the young man rushed at the red wolf, threatening to kill him today. It seemed that with his hand he hit him right inside the open mouth, while his hand remained intact. The red wolf collapsed from the blow, blood gushing from its mouth. The young boss stood over his body and looked at him, stretching his hands. All the prisoners approached the dead red wolf. They all shouted that Yen Vu was so strong that he saved them all. Poor Sun Doi was sitting on a stone, his wounds were bleeding. At that moment the head of security arrived. He walked up to the prisoners with an important look and said that the wolves, as he had planned, were already finished. The chief approached and kicked the lying wolf. Suddenly the wolf he had kicked was still alive, and he bit into the man's leg with all his might. It was such a quick movement that the mouth closed forever. The boss shouted. All the prisoners were only happy about the event, since the warden did not help them fight the wolves and, if not for Yen Vu, the animals would have killed many. Suddenly an arrow that flew from above killed the wolf, which dug into the chief's leg. The warden looked in the direction from where she had come. He said, smiling at the archer, that her arrow was very accurate. It was a girl, the head of the 8th department, who was sitting on a large leopard. Her name was Van Lon Sin. She told the victim that there was no need to thank her, she was just hunting wolves in this territory. The girl asked out of curiosity who could defeat the red wolf here. She wanted to meet this prisoner personally. The head of the guard pointed his hand at Yen Vu, who was standing over the body of the killed wolf. He ordered him to approach the lady. The young man came up and stopped. Then the head of security jumped up to him to kick him on the knee, saying that he did not kneel before the boss. But this only caused pain. The warden became angry and wanted to punish prisoner Yen Vu. The girl waved her whip and said how unfair it would be. She decided to teach her careless boss a lesson. Her whip hit the warden in the face, causing liquid to flow from his nose. The man now had pain not only in his leg, but also in his face. The girl punished him because he deserved it for a long time. She came closer to the young man and told him to raise his head. The girl looked at his facial features, they seemed very familiar to her. But because of his hair, she couldn't see his eyes. The guy said that it was better for him to keep his head down because his face was dirty and it was not good for high-ranking guests to look at the prisoner. Still, she came even closer and lifted his chin with her whip. Unexpectedly, she saw her brother. He called her Van Lansen's little sister and said that he didn't think he'd meet her here. The girl recognized him and covered her mouth with her hand in amazement. In front of her was her sworn brother Yen Vu. The guy said, shyly turning away from her, that since she was the head of the prison department, she could not talk to the prisoner. She did not listen to the young man's arguments. The girl took his hand and said that in childhood they grew up together, although they are not related, they are like brother and sister. Then he asked the girl to make sure that the boss did not pester him anymore. The girl approached the warden, He immediately understood everything and began to make excuses that he did not want to offend the young man at all, and it was all his superiors who ordered him to be put under pressure. The grown man was very scared. After several light blows, the girl came closer to the head of security and told him not to touch her brother Yen Vu in the future. The scene of the warden's humiliation amused the blonde guy Sun Doi. He hadn't laughed for so long, stretching his hands. Our hero's sister didn't even know he was here. She wanted to feel sorry for her brother, but the guy avoided her. He was ashamed that he was now a prisoner. In a few minutes she had to return. She said, standing next to her leopard, that the wolves were not finished yet, so she should not linger. The girl sat astride her beast and said goodbye, that they would see each other soon. The leopard moved quickly, and soon they disappeared from sight. Although the meeting was not very pleasant, the guy was happy about it. When the friends were alone, Sun Doi said that he did not know that his sister was Van Lon Sin, the daughter of Van Tenlona's chief. She was practically the deity of the entire mountain prison here. The young man replied that earlier in her childhood she was just a neighbor's daughter. The friend smiled and said that he was lucky in everything, both in battle and with girls. In the 8th section of the mountain prison in the gorge there were many dead wolves that were killed with arrows. Many corpses of prisoners, torn apart by the creatures, were also there. The third assistant to the warden, who rode a horned buffalo, looked at all this from the height of the gorge. He said the prison suffered huge losses as thousands of inmates were killed. Van Lon Sin approached him at high speed on a leopard. She was very angry. She immediately told her father why he didn't tell her about Uncle Yen and his son. The father turned to his daughter and was not happy with her accusation. He replied that if he told her, it would not change anything, since the Yen family had already lost everything, both rank and wealth. The assistant warden ordered his daughter not to approach the young man again and for him to deal with his own problems. My father believed that this would be better for everyone. The girl said that if he didn't want to tell anything else, she would find out about everything herself. She was sure that the young man with whom she was friends in childhood could not do anything wrong. The wolves ran along the gorge. There were many of them, but this number was significantly less than there were at the beginning. The animals saw a crowd of prisoners that stood in their way. When people saw the wolves, they were very scared. But then they realized that they were running past. The leader of the pack with red eyes looked at the crowd and thought that he had underestimated the people. He needed even more brothers. After a hard day, Yen Vu finally got home. There he sat down on the floor and the girl he had once saved now helped him wash his wounds. She was very scared when she saw so many wounds. But the young man reassured her, saying that everything would heal quickly. He used the rapid healing technique with his knowledge of the 9th secret. His body began to recover before his eyes. After some time, the guy was already completely healthy. He raised his hand up and told the amazed child that his master was immortal, and no one on earth could harm him. At this time, someone else was near this house. This is the girl Van Lon Sin, the daughter of the main boss of Van Tenlona, who came on a leopard to visit her brother. She said his face didn't change at all. The little girl did not like the uninvited guest at all. She thought that she and the master were so good together, and then a beautiful boss arrived. Our hero told the girl why she came back again. A young girl should not communicate with a prisoner, it could harm her. The beauty caught his hand and said that she didn't care about status, she would get him out of here. Yen Vu said that he is a criminal and if she helps him, she herself will turn out to be an accomplice. Suddenly the young people heard sounds outside the window. The girl looked out of the window and saw the overseer and another 6 who were eavesdropping under the windows. She said that she would punish the spies. There was another girl in the room. The young man sent the baby to Sun Doi. Yen Vu realized that he needed to talk to the girl frankly. But here in this house it was impossible. Then the two of Yen Vu and Van Lonsin mounted the leopard and rode away from the settlement. The leopard moved very quickly. The young man, turning to the girl, said that he was very glad to meet her and now at least he could die in peace. The girl had an expression of amazement on her face at these words. She thought about it. The girl immediately replied that he would save such sweet speeches for someone else. But she was flattered that the guy said that. The leopard quickly rushed through the gorge, where sometimes there were even green trees. He left a mark in the sand. The wind blew the hair of the young people, as its speed was very high. The girl asked what happened to his family. Since they had a very honorable title, they couldn't just lose it. The young man replied that it was all because of the princess. The girl remembered the princess from Fuan Palace, who was a very famous person in their monarchy. The young man said that, having received a refusal to marry her, she got angry and drugged him with something, making everyone think that he wanted to rape her. Everything was skillfully arranged. Then her family became angry with his family and stripped them of all their titles and wealth. And they arrested him and wanted to kill him. The guy continued his story and said that they survived thanks to his brother, who gave up his title in exchange for their lives. This is how Yen Vu ended up in a mountain prison. The couple was still riding the leopard. The girl cursed out of anger at the princess, who, because of her refusal to marry her, ruined the guy's life. The guy said that he also learned about the order to the overseers, to make him weak. The girl promised that she would help him sort out at least one problem and not a single hair would fall from his head. Here the young man became worried about the girl, because the princess's family was very influential and it was not worth risking their position for him. The girl asked whether he remembers that incident from childhood, in the mountains. The beauty began the story. It happened in winter, when the whole earth was covered with snow. They got lost together as children in the mountains, and a gray wolf appeared there. They only had small knives with them. Together they scared the wolf away, then the little boy took the girl on his back and carried her through the snow. His shoes had become unusable and he was leaving a trail of blood from his feet. Because of this, the boy froze his feet and came down with a fever. A little girl sat next to his bed and prayed to the gods that he would not die. Since then, the girl promised herself, since he saved her, she would take care of him all her life. The girl called his name. The young man called her little sister Van Lonsin. The girl hugged him from behind, pressing her whole body against his back and wrapping her arm around his neck. Yen Vu was very pleased, his soul felt lighter. It's good that he met her here. The next day, Father Van Lonsin, assistant warden of Van Ten Lona prison, and his men went down into the mine, where the passage to the lair of the bloody demon was opened. He devoured many warriors. His altar was protected by red dogs. They destroyed everyone who approached them. When the girl's father and his men arrived there, many brave men had already disappeared there. One of Van Ten Lona's men jumped forward and began to run towards the altar, saying that he wanted to destroy it. He was armed with a saber. But as soon as he approached the place, the red large hand of the demon caught him. The daredevil was so tiny compared to the size of his hand that the demon crushed the warrior like a bug. The red hand squeezed the man's body and sprayed blood in all directions. Everyone who saw this froze in place. There was horror on the faces of the soldiers. Everyone rushed to retreat. Only the girl's father, assistant warden of Van Ten Lona prison, did not flee. He shouted to his subordinate to take care of his daughter. The boss decided to go to the altar himself. His subordinate shouted to him that he could not cope with the bloody demon himself, but he decided firmly and continued his movement towards the bloody hand. The boss told Li Fun to go back and guard the prison until he got out of that place. During the absence of the boss, he should be in charge. Suddenly, two red hands appeared at the altar. The blood demon stretched them out to grab Van Lonsen girl's father. Compared to the red hands, the man was very small and weak. The red monster's laughter was heard in the mine. Van Tenlona's body disappeared into a bloody, seething mass. The assistant chief hurried to the exit of the mine, fearing that the demon would grab him. Li Fun, emerging from the ground, smiled sarcastically. The man thought how good it was that Van Tenlona died. Now he will be for the main boss. The mountain prison will belong to him. Early in the morning, a young man's exclamation was heard in Van Lansen's chambers. It was the cry of a man who found himself in a different place than he expected. Our hero jumped up on the bed and said that yesterday he drank too much with his little sister Lansin and doesn't remember anything. The young man was tormented by doubts. What if something happened between them? What should he do now? The guy pulled the blanket over himself when his sister opened the curtain to enter. She was alarmed and said that something had happened to her father and she had to go back. The girl ran out, shouting as she went that in the 8th compartment a red demon had been dug up in the mine, and he had taken many human lives. Then her father decided to figure it out and went down underground with his people. The young man ran out after the girl, wanting to go with her. But she mounted her swift leopard and galloped away. The guy had no choice but to use the technique of the 9th secret. The young man could not allow the girl to go alone to such a dangerous place. He used the fast jump method and jumped with great acceleration in the tracks of her leopard. The young man said to himself that the simultaneous use of the 9th secret and the dragon turtle technique allowed him to increase his speed. He moved very quickly, so he soon saw them. The young man was on top and jumped onto the leopard next to the girl. He told her they were going together. The rider was surprised how he was able to catch up with her speedy leopard so quickly. The girl became very serious and said that when they arrived at the place, he must obey her instructions. The guide promised to do as she asked. Suddenly a young man on a large lion stopped them. He shouted at the teenager who he was and why he was so close to his Lansin. It was her relative Lai Sin. The girl was decisive, because she was in a hurry. She told the person blocking the path not to interfere, as she needed to quickly get into the bloody mine. But the man did not want the young people to proceed further. Then the girl pointed her spear at him. He stepped back, waving his arms. Our hero decided to reason with the man. He told him to let them through, as they were in a hurry to save the girl's father and other people from the bloody mine. Lai Sin's relative explained that he did not want them to die, since the mine was very dangerous. He said that everyone who went there never returned. The survivors were those who turned back on her father's orders. Then the girl did not waste any more time talking. She sent her leopard high up and jumped over the lion on which the man was sitting. The leopard was so strong that he did it easily. Together, Van Lonsen and Yen Vu stood near the entrance to the mine. Strange sounds were coming from there and hot air was spewing out. It seemed as if some huge fiery dragon was breathing there. The girl was very brave and until then she was the first in everything. So the young man thought that he needed to take leadership into his own hands, and not hide behind her back. The leopard jumped straight down onto the ledge in front of the abyss. The beast was not afraid of the flames escaping from below. He became alert and sensed great danger. The young man prepared his body to face great danger. He thought that he had to protect his little sister at all costs. He developed a protective aura. The guy said there was something down there. The leopard froze, not wanting to take another step. The girl shouted at the beast, causing him to stop. The animal began to growl and bare its teeth, but did not want to go further. The beauty got off him and came up to stroke him between the ears. She quietly told the beast that if he didn't want to, he could wait for them. The girl told the young man, or he had not changed his mind about going with her. The guy said that he would not let her alone under any circumstances. The two of them slowly descended, using the blue umbrella technique, which created a field of impenetrable protection. They held hands and fell through the air. Suddenly something went wrong, they were disconnected, their connection with the umbrella was lost. A red whirlwind swirled around them. The umbrella flew to the side. They didn't see each other. Suddenly, the bloody dog rushed after the young man in a large stream. He was without an umbrella. The bloody seal burned his back. The skin on the guy's back turned red from the care. The girl was worried about her brother and shouted to him how he was. His partner sent him an umbrella that provides protection from red dogs. But she herself was left without him. As soon as the umbrella opened over the teenager, he received impenetrable protection from the bloody rays of the demon. He concentrated his energy and heard the 16th sound of his body, which means he is at the 16th stage. Just at this moment, the red tongue slashed across Sister Van Lansen's body. She screamed in pain, she got hit in the arm. The young man rushed towards her with all his might, creating an impenetrable field around himself. The guy picked up the girl and put her head on his lap. An umbrella was opened above them, protecting them from attacks. The young man told her to stay here while he went to look for her father. The girl began to worry about him. She said that he could not cope, since the energy of the bloody demon was very strong. But our hero did not listen to her to the end. He knew that every minute was precious. He shouted to her as he ran away, that she was here and he would be back soon. The young man was approaching the most dangerous place in the mine, the altar. The red hand had already crawled out to grab him and drag him into the liquid lava. The girl watched from afar. A cry of horror escaped her when she saw the demon's huge hand. The hand grabbed the young man's body, holding it tightly between its fingers. The demon wanted to devour him, taking his life. It seemed that in another moment all life would be sucked out of the guy's body by this terrible evil energy. Suddenly, with the last of his strength, the guy tore the red shackles to shreds. The red creature began to attack the young man again. This time she hit him painfully, throwing him onto large stones. The boy hit the edge of the stones painfully in the exact place where the wound was. Our hero thought that it seemed to him as if someone was controlling this energy. He decided that he needed to absorb all the energy in order to defeat it. It was a bloody demon. Its energy burns out hearts and destroys bones. The young man knew that if he relaxed for a second, death awaited him. The girl lay under a protective umbrella and was worried about taking the guy with her to such a dangerous place. Yen Vu's body was tense as he tried to absorb the red energy. He shouted to his sister not to think about approaching him, since he was absorbing this power and did not know how it would work. The beauty shouted to the guy that he must definitely cope with this, since if he dies, she will not be able to live without him. The girl was very ill, her whole body was covered in wounds. At this time, at the entrance to the mine, a relative of Lai Sin blocked the path of another warrior who wanted to get there. It was Jan's senator. He arrived riding a shaggy buffalo with large horns. The man was armed and shouted that if something happened to his sister, he would not forgive Lai Sin. He hit the one blocking his path and quickly moved on, shouting as he walked that that guy was pathetic. Then the new prison warden suddenly appeared and took aim at the brave guy. He said how could he not listen to his order, not to go into the mine. The blow was dealt by the boss, and the young man withstood it, defending himself with his weapon. Jansen said that his sister is still in the mine and he cannot sit idly by. Then the boss, hearing the name of Van Loan Sin, whom her father ordered him to look after, allowed the brave young man to proceed to the bloody mine. The daredevil rode his buffalo to the entrance to the mine. He had a stag in his hands. He dismounted the animal and walked to the edge of the shaft. He decided to jump down there. The animal remained on the surface. Two people, a son and a father, who watched this, exchanged words about the daredevil. The son said that this is against the rules and it is very dangerous. The father said that they have no right to restrain the warrior. At this time, in the bloody mine, the girl felt a little better. She was still under the umbrella of protection. Suddenly she saw the daredevil Jansen, who was approaching her. The girl blocked his way. She said that Yen Vu was already fighting the demon. The guy said he didn't know any brother with that name. The guy looked and saw our hero sitting surrounded by red evil energy. The daredevil thought what was wrong with that guy's body, it was resistant to the demon's energy. At this time, in his mind, our hero was a sea dragon turtle. Using this technique, he surrounded himself with the sea element and did not feel the heat that was around him in reality. Two elements fought in him, one was his defense, water, and the other, which attacked him, fire. The bloody hand fought the sea dragon. From their contact, rays of light scattered. The young man was sitting in the lotus position. He put his hands forward, placing one above the other. He knew that refining demonic energy allowed him to advance to the top of the warrior level. The girl and the daredevil Jansen stood and looked at Yen Vu. The daredevil was surprised that the guy was only a warrior level, but he could cope with such an evil force. At this time, our hero was approaching the altar. Without stopping at high speed, surrounded by sea waves, Yen Vu dived into the bloody mass. It turned out that there was still space under the layer of blood and it was free. In the middle, tied with many chains, sat a demon in the form of a man. The body of Van Lansen's father lay in front of him. The young man rushed to him, calling him Uncle Van. At that moment, one of the demon's eyes opened slightly and glowed bright red. The guy squatted down, sweat poured out of him. He thought about the powerful energy coming from the demon. The demon sat chained with many chains. On his chest was a glowing sign that had an inscription. Some powerful glow emanated from her. The demon prayed for the young man to free him. In return, the evil spirit promised to teach him secret martial arts. The teenager answered how he could do this if he could barely stand on his feet. Gradually the guy felt that the pressure had decreased. The demon told the young man that in this place, if he decides that the guy will live, then he will remain alive, but if he wants him to die, he will die. The guy said that the man who was lying in front of him was very influential and that the lives of all the people here depended on him. The young man asked how to free him. The demon ordered to break the chains. The young man thought that perhaps this man was chained here for a reason. He told the demon that he must fulfill his 3 conditions. The bloody old man was indignant at how a young youth could tell him, the great master. All the energy was revived again with renewed vigor, and Yen Vu fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, his body experiencing great tension. He told the demon that he was completely in his hands. The young man said that he may have to wait a long time before someone wants to free him, so the young man needs guarantees that he will not kill him. The demon thought. At this time, the young man took advantage of the hitch and used the 9th secret and the dragon turtle technique at the same time. His body tensed with intensity, the energy of his ancestors activated within him. The demon thought that this guy was using unusual martial arts, his body was capable of absorbing the energy of the blood demon, could he be somehow related to the blood demon? The young man thanked the higher powers for his help, his level rose, and he became a conqueror. The new level was still very low for fighting a demon. The bloody old man shouted at our hero that he could kill him like a chicken, but let the young man name his 3 conditions. The demon had been chained for a very long time, ever since the emperor had chained him. The guy said 3 simple conditions to the old man. First, after liberation, the demon will not be able to kill the liberator. Second, the demon will protect him for some time. Third, he will free the head of the prison. The young man stood in front of the old man. The bloody monster said that he accepted the first and third conditions, but did not agree with the second. The young man asked why he did not want to protect him. The bloodsucker's red eyes widened even wider and he said that he was not worthy of being protected by a spirit like him. Then the young man continued bargaining and said that he was just a prisoner here and his death did not mean anything. He showed that he was indifferent to his fate. The demon replied that in return he could teach him secret martial arts techniques and would fulfill his first and third wishes. The young man said that we must start with the third condition. We must release the boss of Van, the father of the beautiful Lan Xin, otherwise the contract will fall apart. In an instant, as soon as the bloody demon said that the man was free, the Red Hand immediately took the warden and carried him up to the place where the girl and daredevil Jan Sun was. Our hero shouted into the hole that had formed in the bloody mass, telling his sister to take her father out of here quickly and not let anyone else in here. The Red Hand threw the body of the prison warden into the hands of the daredevil. The girl quickly ran up to her father. She said that the brave man would quickly take her father to the first aid station. She would stay here for now. No matter how hard the warrior tried to persuade her to go with him, the beauty refused. She shouted that she would wait for Yen Vu. The daredevil said it was very touching. But a minute later the warrior did it his way. Without permission, he took and slightly knocked out the girl, putting her in a sleepy state. He then lifted the warden and her body onto himself and carried them both out. At this time, the young man was supposed to begin to free the demon. The young man asked how he should break the chains that bound the old man. There were a lot of them and they all burned with red fire. A daredevil appeared on the surface of the earth from the entrance to the mine, carrying a girl in his arms and the warden on his back. The warrior was met by the assistant chief and his son. Suddenly the entrance to the mine began to increase in size. More and more demonic energy came out from there. All people were ordered to retreat. A messenger was also sent to the emperor's palace with the news. The young man gained momentum to approach the demon with great speed in order to break his chains. He began to smash them, so that a strong noise of breaking metal could be heard there. The young man had a feeling that it was not he who was doing this, the demonic force controlled his body so much. The young man thought that if this went on any longer, no medicine would help him. The demon rejoiced. For so many years he had been chained with chains that rubbed his old body, but now he was free. The last links of the chains remained that kept him here. The earth began to move, and the young man was carried to the surface. It arose from the splitting of rock, which moved, emitting a loud grinding sound of stone on stone, slab on slab. Suddenly the sound of rushing water forced the guy to open his eyes. It was a lotus flower that glowed with its purity. There was a thick yellow substance at the center of it. The guy stood up and looked around. This was Swan's regenerative energy. The young man remembered how something had always called to him, ever since he descended into the bloody mine. He took and swallowed the substance. A moment later, the young man felt new energy enter his body. This was an average level of spiritual energy. Now our hero had the opportunity to react within a radius of 3 li to anything, without even opening his eyes. The lotus brought him to a new level. Whatever it is, it will give him something unusual. It will be created during the rebirth of energy. The guy was near a clean source that originates from the very center of the earth. He wanted to get some water. Suddenly, there was a noise and chains, and the place where the demon was sitting appeared from the water. The young man looked at the formation that appeared on the water, and the realization came to him of how it all worked. He realized that he had unraveled the true nature of the creation of demonic blood. Getting out of the ground was not as difficult as escaping the influence of a skinny old man. The young man had little time, since the demon could free himself. The young man decided to go back down. The old man was holding on to the last two chains. He said how brave the young man was to appear before him again. The young man told him that he had found the essence of the creature and could get him out of this trap. The youth said the appearance of the bloody pit had led to chaos in the prison. The pit is constantly increasing in size, occupying more and more new territories. The demon closed his eyes and was lost in his thoughts. Then he said that he agreed to any of his conditions if the guy immediately broke the formation and helped him escape. The young man had to receive guarantees of his life. He told the old man to swear, and if he breaks the oath, then his ancestors will not be able to be reborn. The bloody demon couldn't bear his situation anymore. The elder shouted that he agreed. His eyes opened and looked like two narrow scarlet stripes on his face. The young man enjoyed his triumph. He liked that now everything depended on him. The demon was impatient. Our hero swung his sword with all his might and hit the formation right in its center. Pieces of the object fell into the water. The guy broke it. At this moment, stones began to fall down. The young man managed to jump up using the high-speed jump technique. The bloody demon was without chains. He raised his bony hands up and shouted that he was free. He said his name. This name was Van Zu Chun. Everything continued to fall apart. Suddenly the demon sank to the ground and extended his hand to our hero. The skinny man told the young man to get him out of here. The young man stopped and turned towards the old man's cry. He said that the demon was so strong. The guy didn't understand what happened to the monster's power. The bony old man got angry and shouted at the boy to shut up or he would kill him. At this time, on the surface of the earth, the Van Lonsen girl and her uncle were standing on the edge of the bloody pit. She waited for our hero to come out of the ground. The guy suggested that he might already be dead. But the girl was angry with the man. She put a spear to his throat and told him to be silent and not to prophesy. The boss began to justify what he said, what he was thinking at that moment. The beauty became very thoughtful and said that my uncle was not worthy of our hero. The warrior said that he knew the girl's god-brother, insulted one of the nobles and was punished for it. Suddenly, the beauty joyfully screamed her brother's name when she saw Yen Vu, who jumped out of the bloody pit, carrying a skinny old man. He landed on the ground and the demon climbed off his back. Suddenly, guards appeared here and were ordered to capture the criminal prisoner Yen Vu. The girl screamed that they had no right to arrest him. The guy who gave the order explained that her brother was a prisoner in Section 68, and they were in Section 8, which meant she was hiding him. The chief shouted to the guards to seize the young man. The security began to approach the young man. Then the sister stood in front of the young man and covered him with herself. She said that if anyone came close to him, they would get hurt. The brave beauty turned to the guard commander and said that she would take full responsibility upon herself. The young boss pointed his finger at her and shouted that she was sheltering a criminal, thereby committing a crime. Here our hero intervened in their dispute. He said that he carried out her order and saved her father, which means now he can go to his 68th department. The girl realized that her brother wanted to turn suspicion and punishment away from her. The sister told the guy that when her father gets better, he will figure everything out and everyone will be grateful to him for saving him. Yen Vu greeted his sister's uncle and told him to take care of her, and he had to leave. After these words, the girl, the youth and the skinny old man sat on the leopard and galloped away. It all happened so quickly that the beauty's uncle was unable to do anything. He said that he would kill Yen Vu. After some time, the girl and the boy dismounted from the leopard, and only the old man remained sitting on its back. The girl told the guy that she would accompany him to Department 68 and stay there for a day. Brother and sister walked next to the leopard and talked. The guy said that she is the boss in the 8th department and cannot spend time in the 68th department, especially since no one will touch him with his skills. After some time they arrived at the place. The young man said that it was time for her to return. The skinny old man climbed down from the leopard to the ground, the young man supported him. The girl hesitated to say goodbye, she wanted to stay with the young man. The beauty spent so much time with our hero that she became very sad, as she realized that she definitely needed to return to her father. She told him to speak up if someone offends him. The skinny old man climbed to the top of the plateau, and from top to bottom he watched as the girl mounted her faithful leopard to gallop off into the distance. At the last moment, the beauty asked the guy why he left the bloody pit with the old man. The young man suggested that she not tell anyone about the identity of this old man, it would be better for all of them. He suggested a legend that it was one of the prisoners who fell down while they were opening the mine. The beauty was very worried about the guy, but she could no longer be with him. She told him to be careful and take care of himself. Finally, the young man waved his hand to her, and she turned around and looked at him for a long time until her leopard began to pick up speed. When they were left alone with the old man, the boy told him about who the demon should now be. He is a prisoner who cannot speak because he is afraid that he has fallen into a bloody pit. Approaching the settlement, Yen Vu and the elders saw that some big guy was beating Sun Doi's blonde friend lying on the ground. The thug called the guy names, saying that he was a weakling. The child shouts that when the master returns, he will punish the offenders. The goon says that now everyone obeys him, and there is no longer any master. Suddenly, the voice of the one for whom they were remembered was heard. Yen Vu said that he came to take revenge. The thug turned around and saw our hero. The villain was confident in his abilities. A joyful child's cry was heard. The thug said that the young man would repeat what he said. The visitor said that he would kneel if the offender kissed his great-grandfather on the ass. Then the guy could not stand the insults, swung his hand and wanted to strike the master in the face. The thug shouted that he would knock out all the teeth. Our hero intercepted the attacker's blow by using the clear ring technique, which created a protective field against the attack. The brute could not withstand the resistance and fell off his feet, flying back a couple of meters. The little girl clapped her hands, she was very happy that her master dealt with the offender so quickly. Two prisoners, supporting the thug, took him to the first aid station. Brother Yen Vu brought his brother Sun Doi into the house and put him on the bed. He was very bad, and we had to give him some water, which our hero collected from a spring in the bloody pit. The blonde friend, feeling a surge of strength, asked what kind of water it was. The young man said that this is spiritual water from an underground spring, which speeds up the healing of wounds. At this time, a bony old man entered the house and asked why there were so many people here. Our hero said that Sun Doi is his brother and friend, and the little girl is his servant. The old man shouted at the young man to kick them out, as they might be disturbing him. Sun Doi and the baby got scared of the old man. Our hero quietly told the demon that the only person who bothers anyone in the house is him. The young man stood in front of the bony man and repeated to him that he needed to be kicked out of here. The elder hissed that he had not decided to die in an hour. The young man was not afraid and said that he remembered his strength and respected it, but asked him to be prudent. The demon said, narrowing his eyes, that when his strength was restored, the guy would be the first one he would kill. Yen Vu realized that the demon's promises were worthless. The young man asked the old man to do whatever he wanted with him, but not touch his friend and the child. The guy firmly told the skinny old man to leave the house, as he would be training. A few minutes later, our hero was already sitting in the lotus position and regaining his strength, when suddenly Chernish ran up to him from the side. The dog crawled up to him and took a small jug of water from the source. The young man did not have time to take the container and only shouted that the puppy should not drink the water, but the dog immediately drank a little of it. The animal enjoyed the water so much that you could hear it gurgling in its body. The owner shouted at Chernish that he was a dog named No Good. But the little animal liked the water. At this time, a military detachment approached the bloody pit. The warriors were led by Manhwa, who was the commander of the 3rd Flying Eagle Squadron. They arrived by order of the Emperor. The head of the guard of the 8th Squad met and greeted the commander. At that moment, many eagles began to circle above them. They always accompanied the warriors on campaigns and when performing tasks. The birds descended from the sky and turned out to be very large. Manhwa, stroking the eagle, said that by order they would help deal with the demon and the wolves. He asked to be taken to the bloody pit. The chief reported to the military commander that the prison commander had dealt with the demonic pit, although he himself was seriously injured. Manhwa was very angry, because according to his information, the bosses disappeared into the abyss, and if they are alive and everything worked out, then the royal secret may be known to someone. Here the girl's uncle Van Lonsin intervened in the conversation, who said that some prisoners survived and escaped, that is, they could find out the secret. Having learned this, the commander ordered them to be brought to him. At this time, in Yen Vu's house, friends and the elder sat and regained their strength. Suddenly, along the road leading to the house, many people appeared and approached the house. The son of the girl's uncle, Lonsin, rode ahead of everyone on a lion. The chief overseer of the 68th Department showed him the way. The boss shouted why the criminal lived in such a huge house. A little girl ran out of the house and blocked the way. She said that the master should not be disturbed. The warden struck the ground near the child with his whip. The head of security told the child how dare he block their path. Saying this, he struck the whip near the baby's head. At that moment Blackie jumped forward and bared his teeth. The dog managed to jump high and hit the chief of the guards on the cheek with his claws. The young man sitting in front on the lion called Blackie. It was the girl's uncle, Van Lonsin, who, waving his sword, wounded the dog. Poor Chernish fell and began to whine in pain. The child rushed to the small animal to help. The young man sitting in front shouted to the others to kill anyone who stood in their way. Hearing the noise, Yen Vu came out of the house and asked his uncle if he could find out what they were doing here. The man shouted that the young man deserved to die for attacking the boss. The little servant rushed and blocked the young man. She said they would have to go through it first. To which the enemy said that prisoners should not have servants, and if they are disturbed, then force will be used against them. The order was given to capture both and destroy this house. Suddenly an earthquake began and all the soldiers who surrounded the house fell to the ground. Someone's voice said that they would find their death. Even the Van Lonsin girl's relative fell off his lion and ended up on the ground. The other warriors fell to the ground with white foam coming out of their mouths. The frightened uncle said 2 words, "Royal champion." He was all cowardly with fear. Yen Vu approached Chernish, took him by the paws, lifted him a little, and looked into his eyes. The owner took the puppy in his arms and said that they would take revenge for everything. The young man looked at the fleeing people who ran from their screaming. The little blackie growled at them one last time. When our hero entered the house, he told the old man that after a while people would return with help, and this could be dangerous for him. The skinny old man replied that he was not afraid of anyone. To which the young man said that he would keep the bony old man company. He knew that the royal champions were very strong and worthy opponents. Then the young man approached Chernish, who was wounded. Our hero offered the elderly man water from an underground source for recovery. He drank the water and choked on it. The boy realized when he looked into the small jug that the old man had used all the water. At this time, the royal champions were approaching the house where our hero lived. Driving ahead, showing the way, were the sisters' uncle Van Lonsin and his son. Commander Men Helan flew behind them on a large eagle. The uncle's son shouted to the commander of the 3rd Flying Eagle Squadron that there were criminals in the house. His father told his son that if he was so indecisive, he would forever remain a wimp. The first to line up in front of the house were a dozen overseers with whips, followed by archer warriors. The command to pay attention was heard, and all the soldiers raised their weapons. Dozens of arrows flew into Yen Vu's house. But a bloody hand appeared from the door, which blocked the path of the arrows. It created a field of protection that all the arrows turned around and flew back to the archers. The warriors were struck by their own arrows. They rained down on them from the sky when they least expected it. Many warriors and wardens were struck to death by arrows, and many were wounded. The chief's son's horse bolted out of fright and he, unable to stay in the saddle, fell. But he remained alive. The commander of the 3rd Flying Eagle Squadron became very angry. He picked up a sword and pointed the big bird directly at Yen Vu's house. The house exploded from a barrage of fire. Its roof was blown away, only half of the walls remained standing. The people who were in the house were not injured, but they were all already visible at a glance. The Men Helan commander was still on his eagle when the bony old man looked at him with an angry gaze. Suddenly the military commander's face distorted and he felt ill. His eagle began to fall to the ground. Our hero stood nearby and was amazed at what powerful energy this skinny old man possessed. He thought that if he had such power, he would not allow the shame of his family and would take revenge for them. The commander, sitting on the ground near the fallen eagle, asked in a bow, or he could find out the name of the Lord. He was very humble because he saw the unusual strength of the enemy. The demon replied that the commander had no need to know the name, since all the warriors and he personally could become his snack. The bony old man watched the commander humiliate himself. His warbird was on the ground and could not rise. The military man said that it was a mistake and let everything remain in the past. The blood demon said that even his white-browed king would not dare to negotiate with him. The commander said that the white-browed eagle king lived 100 years ago. He was the best warrior of the dynasty, so even the emperor called him his teacher. Then the commander gave an order to the head of the prison to improve the conditions of this prisoner. The girl's uncle replied that he understood and they did not want to cross the line. The uncle said that he would prepare wine and food, even sacred water, so that the prisoners could regain their strength. To which the old man replied that this was a tempting offer. Then the old man left. Commander Men Helan looked at the young man carefully, but did not say anything. An experienced man decided to quickly get out of here. A minute later, a large eagle carried away the commander on its back. The birds, one by one, took off into the sky. The little maid approached her master and said that the military were not grateful people. Blonde-haired Sun Doi approached his friend Yen Vu and said that the old man was really very strong and if he regained his strength to the end, it could end badly for them. The young people then, after consulting, decided that the demon was still strong, but he was old, and they were young and the power was behind them. The servant girl also supported them. The little girl took Chernish in her arms and pressed him to her. She thought that Master Yen Vu would become the strongest. They all headed into the house. From that time on, our hero began to train with even greater diligence. His consciousness strengthened, his body became like steel. The young man tirelessly improved his family's techniques. These are his thunder strikes. Sweat poured out of him during training. The boy also did not forget the acquired skills and techniques of the sea dragon turtle, which were stronger than he could imagine. Suddenly, the distinguished guest visited the humble home of prisoner Yen Vu with his presence. The commander told him that the old man had managed to escape and believed that his family would restore their good name. Our hero said that he was surprised by the visit of the military commander. Manhwa had a hidden purpose for his appearance. The boss said, trying to be friendly so that the young man would not be angry that he did not help when the boy's family met their misfortune. It turned out that the young man's father and the commander were friends. Once upon a time they swore allegiance to each other. When a problem arose in the family, the young man's father asked his friend not to interfere. The boss said that his father was the best person he knew. The boy thanked the big military commander for his help. After everything, Manhwa asked the guy what happened today. The soldier asked at the end if he understood correctly that this old man was inside the bloody pit. The guy answered the question in the affirmative. Then the commander went to the door and said that he was in a hurry to report this. He added as he walked that he would be well taken care of. The young man wondered if the commander really came here to ask about the bloody pit. Somehow he didn't believe in his honest intentions. The commander quickly mounted his war eagle, which soared into the sky. He thought that the guy looked so reckless and his father would have an easier life without him. The commander thought that he should use this boy and this whole situation to further advance his military career. The next day, when the hematite search robot was in full swing, the friends found a large stone. One of the overseers approached his friends and ordered Yen Vu to go to Sector 7. From these words, Sun Doi immediately became very sad and shouted that this was a mistake, because Sector 7 contained only bandits and murderers. The warden shouted that this was an order from the authorities from above. Our hero stopped his blonde friend, who wanted to say something else to the overseers. The young man calmly said that he understood everything and was already going to pack his things. Only one question was swirling in his head, whose order was it either DJI in or Manhwa? Sun Doi's friend suggested that the area belonged to the black gorillas, so he would go with his friend Yen Vu. The servant girl also said that she would follow the master. Our hero cheerfully told his friends not to worry about him, but rather to stick together, because he has a plan. Misty Wolves Mountain Prison Sector 7 was a very gloomy place, even plants did not grow here, except for one grass. The warden led our hero to a crowd of prisoners, who were all disgusting scoundrels here. These guys began to discuss the new prisoner, who they thought was one of them, a murderer. This is the order the warden received when he brought a young man to the three killers. He said that this is a guy from Sector 68 who beat up the leaders there, so we need to take good care of him. When the warden left, one of the three prisoners said that the warden said so specifically on someone's orders. The freak our hero once beat was from their gang, the Black Gorillas. The guys came closer and closer to Yen Vu, surrounding him from all sides. They said that his rank was not as great as they thought. The young man told the three guys not to trust rumors. He is very weak, how can he beat someone? One of the guys suggested that they could negotiate if the Yen Vu guy would do some favors for them while they were on vacation, in which case they would leave him alone. All three agreed with what their partner said. But the young man told the trio that he was not into such entertainment, and if they liked doing this with someone, then he could correct it. One of the trio, the one who made the vile proposal, told him not to disgrace himself. He asked who would speak first. The guy approached our hero and extended his hand. He wanted to take the new prisoner by the shoulder. Suddenly the young man caught his hand and applied an elbow hold, so that their elbows touched and hit each other painfully. Then the young man threw him in such a way that the prisoner did a somersault in the air and hit the stones painfully. Our hero said that he is a man, not a woman. The big brute who hit the stone stood up and leaned on the rock. He said that the young man was a slave like them. The new prisoner told the three villains that he would see how long they could last. He armed himself with a shovel, which he picked up on the ground. There were already 4 attackers. They surrounded the young man. The young man made a circular motion, striking with a shovel in a circle, so that all opponents got hit in the face. Then he changed tactics, flying over the attackers along with the strike. All this time one person was watching him. He stood on a plateau that overlooked the place where the fight took place. It was the leader of the Bundy, who was waiting for his rival. The young man successfully attacked all opponents. Some of them had broken arms and legs. None of them could withstand the young man's blows. Yen Vu's protective aura glowed from the spiritual energy that was flowing into his body. He told his opponents to come closer and prove who they were. Suddenly, a fat man armed with a sledgehammer began running straight towards the guy from the cliff. It was the protector of black gorillas, nicknamed Mountain Dune. The fat man immediately swung his sledgehammer at the young guy, shouting that he would crush him like a cockroach. Our hero, concentrating energy in his hand, created a protective field from the fat man's formidable weapon. The sledgehammer froze in the air for a moment and then flew away under the influence of his force.
If you have watched up to this point, then I am very grateful to you, because this is where the video ends. If it's not difficult for you, then like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to continue this story, then write in the comments. Thank you all, I love you all.